Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the WARC Indian History Podcast.
Namaste, Sumedha here from Switzerland. You will not see smiles on our faces today because we have decided to do this very emergency session of the podcast to bust some of the myths around Kashmir. And why have they come up again? Because of the Pahalgam massacre. So we'll start with expressing our condolences and deepest sorrow at what has happened in Pahalgam. And it is our contribution to try and clear up things which have been seen, especially in the Western media, around the idea of Kashmir, around the idea of the self determination of Kashmiris, colonization of Kashmir by India. Was Kashmir ever a part of India? What right does India have over Kashmir? We want to talk about all these things. And I think Utkarsh has some very pertinent questions about this.
Yeah. So I think the starting point of all of this is I think you always have to be cognizant of no matter what you think is correct and right, you have to be cognizant of what the narrative is, what is the general understanding, particularly in a global context. And the thing that I find a little bit annoying, and which is what we want to probably address with this, is there is a false equivalence given even in so-called neutral media, because Western media is supposed to be neutral between India and Pakistan. There's a false equivalence between India's claim on Kashmir and Pakistan's claim on Kashmir, and I'm putting those claims in quotes for very deliberate reasons, because there is no equivalence here. I mean, I have some understanding of it, obviously, but I think what we want to do here is we want to delve deeper. We want to do two or three things. One is Kashmir is an as integral part of India as any other part of India as you can name. It has been so for thousands of years. We're going to tell
Yes,
you why,
yes.
right? So that there isn't any counter. And these are just facts, historical facts. It's nothing to do with opinions. Number one. Number two, in terms of the modern context, in terms of all of that terrible things that happened post partition, there is a claim there. And even in that particular claim, the claim is in India's favor, right? So that is what we want to do. We want to get the facts right. And my main thing is, I am, I'm fairly westernized. I read all Western media, whether it's New York Times, Economist, whatever have you. It always annoys me. And
And Utkarsh,
there,
if I can just interrupt here, I believe the New
yeah,
York Times has really gone too far this time, and it was in fact corrected by the US Committee on Foreign Affairs or something.
yeah,
They refer to these terrorists as militants. That's what the
yeah,
WAPO is also doing. So,
yeah,
this idea of neutral media is a myth. There
yeah.
is no neutral
That's
media.
that's a
And
bigger issue in
yeah.
general. Yeah, but
But
yeah,
Utkarsh, I'll tell you where this comes from, where specifically this comes from, because this has been articulated by a lot of Western historians and geopolitical strategic experts, etc. So we'll talk about that. But
yeah.
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, so that was it. That the purpose of this is to just give a factual record in a relatively succinct fashion of what the situation really is, right? I mean, there are tangents to go into in terms of why there are certain biases in Western media, in terms of why what is happening. But the purpose, I think, of today's discussion, if we try to keep it, is just to give you the facts, right? Which cannot be disputed. I mean, these facts are not dependent on the messenger. These facts are facts, regardless of whether the messenger is sitting in Geneva or India or Pakistan or Singapore or wherever. These are facts. So that's what I think we'll attempt to do, and that's where, of course, we'll need your deeper knowledge than I have, and that's why I kind of messaged you and said that this is something we should be doing at this particular point in time.
Yes, yes, yes. So this one was is in response to a message from Utkarsh that we must do this, myth busting, because obviously we try to get to the bottom of any matter. And we were going to do a light-hearted issue, or pick up the light-hearted issue of vampires and have fun with that. But this is really not the time for fun.
Yeah,
So, can I start with what I feel as a historian is a problem in the Kashmir discourse? So, the Kashmir discourse, and if you just Google Kashmir, the dispute comes up. The idea that it's a Muslim majority nation, therefore it belongs to Pakistan, that comes up. India never had any claim on Kashmir, it was never a part of India. All these things really come up. So, because this is going to be a very short episode, I'll just give you the highlights without going into details, which are actually pretty interesting. So, Kashmir is identified with Parvati, goddess Parvati, in our own understanding and mythology. There is a special Puran for Kashmir, which is called the Nilmat Puran. The Nilmat Puran has all the details of how it came into being, who were the kings, queens, what happened, what is the social life, everything. So from there we get a lot of details, and there is a book called Raj Tarangini by Jona Raja. It gives you the history of Kashmir from the earliest times till around the Muslim invasion in the 14th century, which was a really brutal one. You know, Kashmiri Pandits, Kashmiri Hindus say that they have been massacred 7 times. The last one was in the 90s. So these massacres have been carried out by the Islamist invaders. But let me go to the absolute beginning. The absolute beginning, well, 50 million years ago, the Indian plate clashed with the Asian plate. The Sea of Tethys was submerged and came up Pir Panjal and the Zanskar range. And in between these two is the Kashmir Valley. So the Kashmir Valley, according to our stories, was a lake. It was the Satisar lake, and because there was a demon inside it, the Devas wanted to kill that demon, but he was hiding in the water. So Anant Sheshnag or Balram, he created a gap, and the water drained out, and the demon was killed, and Kashmir was populated by many different people, Nag, Pishach, Manav, etc. All these are mentioned in the Quran. Utkarsh, although we are a short episode, I must tell you that modern geological findings have told us that this story is correct. Not the bit about the demon, of course, geology doesn't tell you that, but there was a lake, and that lake was drained. So we know this because modern geological findings have told us that the sediments in the Kashmir Valley are fluvio-lacustrine in nature, and those are formed by moving water. And there is also near Baramulla, there is a little trough in the whole basin which can allow the water to flow out. So, the point is that we cannot dismiss Puranic stories as just stories. There is always a bit of truth to them. Now, we always go back to the Mahabharata for many things. So, for the question of did Kashmir ever belong to India, or is it all Pakistani, we can go back to the Mahabharata, and we can also go back, Utkarsh, to our episode on Bharat. And when we spoke of Bharat as a civilizational state whose political boundaries have shifted in the thousands of years. In the Mahabharata, there is a description of Bharat, and in that description, there is a mention of the people of Kashmir. So I don't know how far back or how much more far back you want to go. There is a description in the Brihat Sanhita around the 5th century. Then you also have Shankaracharya, who traveled all across India. His travels were also there in Kashmir. My favorite Mauryans, the Mauryan king Ashok, is supposed to have actually established Srinagar, the capital city. And again, a lot of detail about that, which I don't want to tell you. But what is the nearest historical story about Kashmir? So that is, again, in the Mahabharata. So Janmejay, remember Janmejay and Vaishampayan were talking to each other. That is how the whole story of Mahabharata starts. We've mentioned this before. So he asks Vaishampayan, why did the king of Kashmir not fight in the Mahabharata war? So then the whole story is told that the king of Kashmir, who was called Gonand, he joined up with Jarasandh to fight the Yadavs, and he was killed by Balram. His son came to take revenge, and his son Damodar was killed by Krishna. And what did Krishna do after that? He coronated the pregnant wife of Damodar. Her name was Yashomati, as the queen of Kashmir. So she is the first queen of Kashmir. Remember this, because there are other very interesting queens of Kashmir. And his widow Yashomati is the first queen of Kashmir. We should not forget this fact, because in the socio-political life of Kashmir as described in the Nilmat Puran, there are a lot of Indic elements, including the respect given to women. So this is as far as our own, old understanding of Kashmir goes, about how far back is the idea that Kashmir and Bharat are the same. So after that, if you go read the Raj Tarangini, there is a long list of people who were there rulers of Kashmir, etc. And it's a long list. One day, Utkarsh, we will look at it. Today, I just want to mention a couple of people who have been forgotten by history, but we should not forget them. In the 8th century, there was a king called Lalitaditya Muktapid, and he was a very famous warrior, and he conquered lots of bits of India. So to the west, to the east, to the south, he came down, across the Vindhyas also. But have you ever heard of Lalit Aditya Muktapid as one of the big kings of India? Although, of course, we don't even hear much of Rajaraja Chola or Rajendra Chola. So what can one say? But he was a kind of pan-Indian king. Then again, in the 10th century, there was this very fascinating Queen Didda of Kashmir, who ruled for 40 years. And she even struck coins in her own name. So all these are bits of history which I'm telling you to show you how the whole history of Kashmir and Bharat are not different. So then after that, the Muslim invasion happened in 1346. There was a Shamiri dynasty, and there was somebody called Sikandar Butt Shikan who came there. So it was his objective to wipe out all of Hinduism from the valley. So massacre of Hindus, breaking of temples, breaking of idols. So then, you will wonder, why is Kashmir 80-90% Muslim? What happened? The Islamic invasion came to the rest of India also, but it's not 80-90% Muslim. Whereas Kashmir is, because the massacre, killing, and violence over there has been much more than anywhere else. So this is as far as, or to bring it a little more into the modern period, after the Muslims, you had one Punjabi king, Ranjit Singh. He is another one who is often not mentioned, but Ranjit Singh was another very. What's the interesting thing about Ranjit Singh, Alok? Utkarsh? His family owned the Kohinoor, and his, I think it was his grandson or somebody is supposed to have given it to Queen Victoria.
Of course.
Yeah.
Nice gift.
Yeah. And he is also the person who covered a lot of temples with gold, including the Vishwanath temple. So anyway, this was in the 18th century. Then you had the Dogras, and that's where we come to 1947.
Yeah.
King
So
Hari Singh.
Yeah, I think 2 or 3 things just to note before we get into the details of 1947, which are pertinent to this. The modern Indian nation state is the modern expression of the Indian civilization, which has existed for several thousands of years. Numbers we've talked several times. Kashmir was as integral a part of this Indian civilization as any other part of it, whether it be where Bihar is today or whatever it might be. It's as integral as that, right? So this part is very, very clear. This is not of any debate or criticism. This is historical fact, verified, known across the board. So I think the one thing that I want to address, and I'll give you very clear what my stand is now, because the entire basis on which the Indian state, the British Indian state, was divided was on the basis of population majority.
Religion,
right?
yeah, religious.
That religious majority in population,
The
which is the entire
two-nation theory.
which is the entire basis of the creation of Pakistan. Right. So then, as a devil's advocate, who in general, so in my point of view, there's a lot to be said about that particular decision and what we think about that and how it kind of literally cut a civilization into different pieces. Let's keep that aside for a second. If that is the fundamental assumption and the justification for Pakistan to exist as a country, that it is the Muslim majority parts of of India, then what is the steelman best version of their argument for Kashmir being a part, and what is the counter to that argument? Because I just want to put this in both sides so that we can give it versus just coming at it from an Indian point of view, which is what we are coming from at it from. So I just wanted to for you to give that perspective as well as we talk about the events of 1947 and forward.
Yes. So you see, this two-nation theory believed very strongly that the Muslims and the Hindus could never live together. They were two different peoples. They even in fact feel that the DNA is different, the civilization is different. They're two separate races. And this is not something only in 1947. General Asim Munir, who is right now the head of the Pakistani army, said this about 6 days ago, that Hindus and Muslims can never live together. They are two different people. And mind you, the Muslims are superior, so they cannot live with this inferior race. Also, at the time of this whole ferment in the 40s, the Congress was the leading party. And the Congress was led by, people like Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, etc., etc. Although there was also Maulana Azad, there was also Jinnah. So there was this idea that when the British go away, can these superior Muslims live under Hindu domination? No. That was the answer of some of the Muslims. Not all, because some of them were also in the Congress, but some of the Muslims and Allama Iqbal, who has unfortunately written that wonderful song which we all love, Sare Jahan Se Acha Hindustan Hamara. He was the biggest ideologue of Pakistan and the biggest ideologue of this fact that these two cannot live together. And the other Islamic version of Sare Jahan Se Acha Hindustan Hamara, people, please listen to it. I'm not going to mention it here. So there was this idea, they are two separate nations. They cannot live together. If at all they can live together, it is only under Muslim domination, as has been the case in their heads for the past 1,000 years. Because they harked back to the Islamic invasion of India and the setting up sultanates and the setting up of the Mughal dynasty. Although, that's also highly exaggerated because there was a lot of resistance and obviously India did not become fully Islamic. One day we must do something on the Mughals, the Timurids, to show how much of Bharat was actually not with the Timurids. But this is the idea of two races, two different religions, the superiority of the Muslims, and they cannot live with the Hindus. Now, this was put forward by ideologues like Jinnah, also Sayyid Ahmad Khan, the establisher of Aligarh University. And there is a very good, very nice book called Creating the New Medina. Anyone who wants to know more about this can read that book. Now, this was also accepted and completely internalized, or it was also the opinion of the British. So Alistair Lamb has been one of the biggest names. He is a British person who has written about Kashmir problem, written about what happened in 1947 and how we should go forward. What does he say? He says that Kashmir is a Muslim majority nation and it should not live under Hindu domination. And if Kashmir had been a part of British India, remember, British India was different and the princely states. So Kashmir was a princely state.
Yep.
He said the problem is that Kashmir was a princely state. Therefore, Raja Hari Singh had this option. Otherwise, if it had been with us, we would immediately have given it to Pakistan. So this is a big problem. He accepts the two-nation theory. He accepts the fact that the one that you are mentioning, that if it is a Muslim majority nation, then it has to go to Pakistan. And that's how the whole thing was thought of. And you see the problem, Utkarsh. The king, the Dogra king, was a Hindu. Most of his subjects were Muslim. So the story was made that in 1947, these people arose in a revolution against the king because they hated the Hindu domination and the way in which they were being exploited by the Hindu king.
Which of course is not true because it was invaded by.
Yeah. So I will tell you, you the exact details of what happened.
Yeah.
I just want to mention that Bharat has never ever accepted the two-nation theory, ever. Because did we say that all the Muslims should go out of India? No, we accepted them. In fact, they were about 10% in India at the time of partition. Today they are 14.
Yeah.
And look at Pakistan. They were around 22, 23. Now they are down to, I think, 5 or 7.
Talking about Hindus in Pakistan.
Yeah.
But of course, Pakistan is explicitly an Islamic country, whereas India is secular.
Yeah. So, secular, Utkarsh, we'll have to go back to our...
I know. I winked as I said that because I remember our episode. But yes, for the purpose of...
However, the point here is that Bharat has never, ever accepted the two-nation theory.
Yeah.
And it did not accept it. There were many other places like Hyderabad, Junagadh, etc. Utkarsh, an episode on accession of the states to India is important.
Yeah.
Okay, so shall we now go on to what was happening in 1947?
Yes,
Because
please.
that's very important. Because I
Yeah.
have also seen some people and some books and some articles which say that Hari Singh did not at all sign any instrument of accession. It is something imagined by Indians and they are lying about it. There is no instrument of accession which exists. Well, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry to disappoint those people. It exists. So how did all this come about? So the idea, it, Britain decided that they would leave India. So the States Reorganization Commission and that whole thing was created. Vallabhbhai Patel was heading it, and all the princely states, they were about 545 or something, roughly. They had to accede either to India or to Pakistan. So, of course,
Mm.
Vallabhbhai Patel and his secretary VP Menon spoke to everyone, and so did the Pakistanis, and people gave their options. To
Mm.
the northwest of India, you had Punjab, which was Muslim as well as Hindu, and Punjab has the bloodiest history of partition.
Yeah.
And to the east, you had Bengal, that again has the bloodiest history of
Yes.
partition, which is forgotten. Direct Action Day happened in Bengal.
Yeah.
So the thing is that the Muslim League wanted this to be the idea that Hindus and Muslims cannot coexist. There has to be communal disharmony no matter what. Now, unfortunately for them, there was no communal disharmony in Kashmir. There were very few Hindus and there were more Muslims, but it was more or less okay. There were actually no problem. So then they had to create some. And then they started creating them by infiltrating their own people. Again, people who think that I'm making this up, I will refer to a book written by someone called Akbar Khan, who is from the Pakistani army. And he wrote this book in the early 80s. And he explained how infiltration was done in Kashmir to create some kind of disharmony and anger amongst the local populace. And this was true even in Bengal. So, there are people who say that the Muslims who did not agree with the two nation theory had to be forced to agree by creating a situation of massacre of Hindus, so that Hindus would then rise up against Muslims and Muslims would be convinced that we cannot live with them. So this
Mm.
was a strategy which was done by the person who's called the Butcher of Bengal, Sohrawadi, Direct Action Day in
Yeah.
1947 in Bengal. And this was done also in Kashmir. Now, this was happening, and all the kings and princes had to accede to India or Pakistan. But some of them did not want to do either.
Mm.
They said, we will be an independent country. So the Dogra Maharaj Hari Singh in the beginning said, no, I will neither go to Pakistan nor India. I will be an independent country. And he could be so because he was not part of British India. He had the legal, moral, all rights to take this decision. Remember this line, Utkarsh.
Mm.
He had every right to take a decision about his
Yeah.
kingdom
Correct.
because he was the king.
I mean,
Now,
that's what we have to start off with, right? So
yes,
ultimately, nations, borders today, structures, nation states, they are all built on certain sovereignty rights that people
yes,
have. If you suddenly start questioning
yes,
this right or that right, then everything falls apart. No
yes,
border should exist, right? So, I mean, we have to assume that there is a certain weight to be given to legal
yes.
rights, sovereignty,
Yes, he was the
right?
sovereign. He had the
So,
legal and sovereign right to take this decision. This is something which
correct.
cannot be forgotten.
Yeah. So,
But
anyway, so the,
Utkarsh, this is forgotten very easily because
of course
if
it is.
you talk to the
Everything is
Pakistani
forgotten when
side,
it's convenient.
yeah,
Yeah.
they'll say no, but he was a Hindu king of a Muslim majority. He had no moral right to decide anything about his people. So that
Hmm.
is an argument which is definitely not acceptable in the whole perspective of international law. But however, before October 47, so from this was happening over the past few months. So Maharaja Hari Singh tried to do something to quell all the problems inside his kingdom and the issue of where to go. So he signed a standstill agreement with Pakistan and India. What does that mean? That nobody will do anything.
Hmm.
Everyone will be quiet, stay within their own borders, and do not do any aggression. Why did he have to do this? Because Pakistan was actually doing a lot of aggression. But it did not deter Pakistan. The infiltration, the violence kept on happening, kept on happening. Also, Pakistan accepted the standstill agreement, signed it with Maharaja Hari Singh, but violated it. India refused to sign it. It did not agree with the standstill agreement, but I mean, it kept on talking to Hari Singh, talking to him and trying to convince him, etc., etc. VP Menon and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. It's a very, very tense and exciting story. So then Pakistan decided to up the ante and they sent in their army disguised as tribals to show what? That this was a indigenous
Local uprising.
uprising against the Maharaja. So
Yeah.
when this happened, before 6 weeks or 4 to 6 weeks before this happened, Maharaja Hari Singh, after his cogitation and whatever, had already decided that he would join India. But why did he not join if he had decided? Because Jawaharlal Nehru did not want it so. Jawaharlal Nehru also, well, he had, I don't know what to say, let's discuss him later. But he had this idea that his friend Sheikh Abdullah had been kept in jail by Maharaja Hari Singh. So he said, till my friend is released from jail, we will not accept your accession.
Great.
So therefore, he did not accept the accession. Then it became very urgent. So on 25th October 1947 at night, a flight went from Delhi to Srinagar carrying VP Menon and a few other people, including the famous Sam Manekshaw. And they went and spoke to the Maharaja, and 25th late night, 26th early morning, the instrument of accession was signed and then it was carried to India. The flight took off in very dramatic circumstances when light was failing and it would have been very difficult to go. What was the time element? Why was it important? Because the Pakistani army was advancing. And something had to be done to stop them. Otherwise, they would have taken over Kashmir. There is a very interesting, I mean, one of our first, I think, Paramveer Chakra, Somnath Sharma, he got it in that war. So that flight took off and reached Delhi. And it was dated 26th October 1947. It was accepted by Mountbatten, who was the person doing the acceptance, etc. On 27th October. Now, you know, this is where a lot of the confusion comes up. So when did he sign it? Did he sign it? When was it accepted? And why this confusion? Also, VP Menon, in his own book, has not mentioned this 25th October incident at all. He has only mentioned not the 25th incident, but he's just said it's dated 26th. This light came to light. There is a very good book. Anyone who wants to know the details, please read. It's called Rival Versions by Prem Shankar Jha. And by rival versions, you understand that he discusses both versions. Then he goes to the archives, to the papers, to the documents, etc., and gives you the correct version. So what did he do? He also wrote this book somewhere in the 90s, I think, when Sam Manekshaw was still alive. So he went to interview Sam Manekshaw, and Sam Manekshaw gave this, what is called a Chashmadid account. That means a witness account of how the instrument of accession was actually signed and then flown to Delhi. Once this instrument of accession was signed, then the Indian army sent in its troops, and the Pakistan army in 1948, then 47 and 48, they clashed over there, and they had come in a little bit, but you know, then there is a line of control where the two armies met. Jawaharlal Nehru took this issue to the United Nations. The United Nations then asked everyone to just stop wherever they were. And well, we stopped like fools. But anyway, we stopped there. And after that, a series of resolutions were passed about plebiscite. Should Kashmiris be given the right to decide their own future? This is what the UN said. They said, okay, yes, we want it. But first, withdraw your army. So Pakistan has never withdrawn its army. Therefore, you know, that whole thing has fallen through. There are 2 or 3 UN resolutions which I would like people to read. I will put the link.
So essentially, Pakistan is in violation of a UN resolution since 48.
Yes. It is in violation of almost every agreement it has signed. It signed the Shimla Agreement and said, okay, we'll never cross the LOC. Of course, it crosses the LOC. And of course, not only does it send terrorists, there was this whole Kargil war. Then in 1965, there was another war. So 1965, the Shimla Agreement had not been signed. but it was there was a UN Mojib and a UN SIP, lots and lots of
Yeah.
UN thingies, which Pakistan has happily violated all of those, and
Yeah.
that is easily discernible if you read
Yeah.
those yourself, read the resolutions for yourself.
Yeah.
So the situation over here is such that it has not been accepting international law. It has not been accepting the ideas of sovereignty. It basically
Yeah.
does not accept the accession by King Hari Singh of Kashmir to India. How it can be made to accept that, I don't know. Because inside the head of Pakistan is this whole idea that we have been cheated out of Kashmir. Kashmir was a Muslim kingdom. It should have come to us. And they will never be able to get over this. Now, of course, there were many Muslim kingdoms which did come to India. So I don't know. And there was a kingdom, the Northwest Frontier Province of Frontier Gandhi, which wanted to join India, but it could not because it was landlocked in Pakistan. That's the northwestern frontier. So they just had to give up.
Hmm.
So there have been many tragic and political stories about this, but here it is the inability of Pakistan to let go of Kashmir. Religious reasons. Also, Kashmir is a beautiful place. It has always had this reputation of being a paradise. It's also situated at a very geostrategic position as far
Hmm.
as the Indian subcontinent and Central Asia are concerned. So, in every way, Kashmir is important, very important. Now, Pakistan thinks that it was cheating by the Brits, which so there's another very nice little conspiracy theory that they redrew the Punjab border so as to give an entry to the Kashmir kingdom to Indians. Otherwise, that would not have been there, and Kashmir would have been forced to join Pakistan. You can read it in rival versions. I must stress the fact that what is here with India today is not all that it is entitled to. What we call POK, Pakistan Occupied Kashmir. When we speak of POK, Pakistan thinks of whatever it has, the parts of Kashmir that it has in a different way. So there's a little portion to the south which it calls Azad Kashmir. Then there is this large part, Gilgit Baltistan. Now, Gilgit Baltistan is another story of betrayal by the British. It was a British army captain who kind of cheated and gave Gilgit Baltistan to Pakistan, because Gilgit Baltistan was not a part of Hari Singh's kingdom. It had been leased to the British. However,
Hmm.
in 47, that lease came to an end, so therefore, it was a part of King Hari Singh's kingdom. You see, these
Hmm.
things are very complicated, and lots of things keep happening this way and that way. So, in 1947, it was a part of the kingdom of Kashmir, of Raja Hari Singh's sovereign lands, which he acceded to India. However, with the help of, I think they are called the scouts, and there was a captain of the Brits who just, he just went over, took over Gilgit Baltistan, and flew the Pakistan flag on it. So Gilgit
What was his
Baltistan,
motivation?
hmm,
What was his motivation?
yeah, that it should go to Pakistan. So
Why?
the
Why for the
British
British
were
captain?
not neutral at all. If you think the
Okay.
British were neutral, they were not neutral at all. All of them had their own
Okay.
biases. And the idea that Muslims and Hindus were different was absolutely ingrained in the British. They used to call the Muslims the martial races, and the Hindus the banyas, cowards, etc. And they spread this myth that Hindus are, bound to lose if there's any war. Pakistan has bought into this myth, and it's a big trouble for it. So,
Hmm.
anyway, Gilgit Baltistan is a story of betrayal by a British army captain. Today, Pakistan has entered into an agreement with China and ceded the northeastern part of Kashmir to China. So, if you actually see the map of Kashmir, you are familiar with the Indian map, Utkarsh. But in that Indian map, if the northwestern part and the northeastern part, the northwestern part is in the control of Pakistan, and bits of the no, the northwestern is in the control of Pakistan, and the northeastern little bit is in the control of China. So
Hmm.
currently, we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem. I don't know how this problem is going to be sorted or solved, because Pakistan is willing to do 1,000-year war. You see, in the pursuit of the Kashmir Valley, Pakistan has driven itself to the ground, ruined itself, ruined its economy, and the people are living in privation and anger. Currently, Pakistan is hanging together by a thread, which is another reason for the Pahalgam attack, to
Yeah.
distract attention
Yeah.
from all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Balochs are angry, the Sindhis are angry. The writ of the central government does not run in these places. So
Hmm.
it's and why is all this? Because the army is obsessed, maddened by the idea of Kashmir. It has also sold it to the population. So let's not go into that Aman ki Asha thing that no, people don't want it. People also want it today. Highly radicalized population. And also in our own Kashmir, there is no dearth of a radicalized population because there has been a lot of local help, always in all terrorist massacres and also in this Pahalgam massacre. So it's a terrible, toxic, dangerous cocktail of religious fanaticism, obsession, jealousy, anger, and I don't know how. I really don't know how to solve it. How it can be solved? Maybe. See, one of the things that was spoken about was to remove Article 370, because Article 370 is what? It gives special status to Kashmir. It was allowed to have a head of state.
Hmm.
So till Article 370 was abolished or was removed, deleted on 6th August 2019, Kashmir had a separate prime minister and a separate constitution, etc., etc. So therefore, everyone felt, yeah, anytime it wants, it can just become a separate country. But 370 was abolished by the Indian Parliament, accepted by the Supreme Court. It's now settled law. So that bit is gone. That hope is gone. But what about the idea of this Muslim ummah, Muslim nation? That has not gone, and a
Hmm.
highly radicalized population. So, well, some very drastic measures will be thought of, but I really don't know because drastic measures calm Pakistan down or cow it down for some time and then it comes back. And unfortunately, Utkarsh, this Pahalgam massacre, they have taken tips from the Hamas. It's a very
Hmm.
similar kind of attack to October 7th. Attack in a large open space, and they wore body cams, just like the Hamas terrorists. Only one or two of those videos have been released as yet, but they will be released to have a kind of psychological effect on Indians. It's going to happen in the next whatever time. So the intractable problem of Kashmir remains. Sense would tell Pakistan to let go of this and to concentrate on building its own economy, its own people, but sense does not seem top of the mind for Pakistani generals at all. Till the 80s, Utkarsh, they had a better per capita GDP than us. Their growth rate was better than us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And look at it now. I think every year we are adding more than one Pakistan to our economy. Many Pakistans, many Bangladeshis.
Hmm.
Islamic radicalism has them in its grip. It's not good for the people at all. But Utkarsh, for Kashmir, I think now, since this is a short episode and we wanted to do a pointed thing on the events of 1947 and what exactly happened, maybe we can end it here. But we must do
Yeah.
another one
Yeah.
on the cultural contributions of Kashmir to the idea of Bharat. From
Hmm.
Panini to the Shankaracharya to Abhinav Gupta. And see, I am a follower of Trikha of Abhinav Gupta. That this is actually a Kashmiri script. This is Om written in Kashmiri script. Your sister, your mother, my sister designed it for me, and I wear it all the time because I'm a follower of Trikha. So Trikha is a contribution of Kashmir. We did the Brihat Katha tradition. That
Hmm.
also Somdev,
Hmm.
who wrote the Brihat Katha. and the Briyat Katha Manjari as well as the Katha Sarit Sagar, both Kashmiris. There's so much which we must discuss. The cultural contributions of Kashmir, and it's intertwined with the idea of Bharat. You cannot take it away.
Yeah.
Bharat will be incomplete and Kashmir will be adrift if you divide the two.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, see, there is no easy answer to this. I
Yes.
mean, the only hope is that ultimately, ultimately, if you form your country, and your entire objective of way the country is run towards a very ideological driven objective which does not prioritize prosperity of the people,
Yes.
ultimately your country will fall apart.
Yes.
And
Yes.
there is no such thing, there is no such antidote for attacks as shared strength, economic or defense. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of the CCP, China, but there is no doubt that China is such a relatively strong country. I'm saying I'm a fan. I'm just saying there's no doubt that they have gotten themselves position. They're quite strong economically, and even in terms of defense terms, how they've intertwined themselves. That is
So,
very only
Utkarsh,
a few.
for this episode, I
Yeah,
have taken the help of people who I will not
yeah,
name, but they know
yeah,
who they are. Thank you.
yeah,
So, in discussions, this was one of the things that came up, that perhaps the only way to solve this is through India's rise. That when the gradient becomes so much, and there is no way that it can challenge India in any way, perhaps that's the only time that it can.
yeah,
But
yeah,
Utkarsh, does it really work like that? Look at Hamas, it has nothing, but it still keeps attacking Israel. What does Hamas have? It's on charity. It has nothing of its own, but it's still attacking Israel. So perhaps it's also important to get rid of that mindset. So in Pakistan, what is said? Of course, the three A's: Army, Allah, and America. Now it has become AAC: Army, Allah, and China. And also, it is said countries have armies, but in Pakistan, the army has a country,
true,
and it
true.
runs the country the way
Yeah,
it sees fit.
yeah, yeah. Anyways, we are not experts. One
Yes.
can only hope, but there is no doubt that building your own strength is one of the best ways to help it. It not inure you, but it can't hurt. So I think that has to be one focus on a continued basis.
Yes. True.
Yeah. Good. Should we end it here?
Yes, I think so. And we will do more episodes on Kashmir, especially its cultural contributions, because there will be very interesting things which come up. And also, Utkarsh, maybe more details on how the states acceded to India in 1947. Some of them are really exciting stories, very
Yeah.
exciting stories.
Yeah.
So maybe we should do something on that. Anyway, there is no dearth of topics. We will see you again with
Yeah.
another interesting topic. Do watch, subscribe, share, and please tell us how you like this episode. Namaskar.
Thank you.